Okay, welcome to Bestseller Live. My amazing co-host Cynthia Johnson, and I are back together again today. And look, it's been a great couple of weeks, great interviews, and today is no different. We've got one of my friends and mentors, Mark Thompson, who's the author of CEO Ready, which is actually Mark is coming out in November.
We have it coming out next Tuesday. Yes, absolutely.
Ah, amazing, amazing. Mark is a global expert in CEO succession and high stakes leadership transitions. He's one of the best coaches in the world, and he has coached more than 100 C suite leaders into enterprise roles and is the founding chairman and CEO of the Chief Executive Alliance and the CEO Leadership Plan Review, a former chief executive of the CEO Academy in partnership with Wharton and McKinsey. Mark is also that was a leader at Charles Schwab, and he's a New York Times bestselling author and co-author of the upcoming book we just talked about, CEO Ready. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for allowing me to have the conversation with you, and thank you for leading these incredible conversations all over the years, Rhett.
Well, I'm just trying to be like you, man. You were the inspiration.
See, we're all trying to be like you. I was with the bios. I mean, what a career you've had.
He's an amazing guy. He's an amazing guy for sure.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. So happy to be able to kind of continue to fuel the conversation about how we can all be the best we can be.
Yeah.
Well, first, is that the book behind you?
It is. Yep.
Yeah. Great. See, it stands out.
Awesome.
I have to ask, with this incredible career, what prompted you to write the book now?
Well, the interesting thing about it is that Harvard Business Review approached me. I'm kind of one of those guys who, when asked about a resume or a book proposal, I don't understand either, because I've been blessed with having people approach me on the dais or when I'm at a conference. Usually it's at NASDAQ, where I spend a lot of time here in New York. And it was Scott Baronato, the editor-in-chief at Harvard Business Review, came up and he said, we've done a lot of books about business. Yeah, I said, I've heard of you guys. And yeah, I'd love to do something with you someday. He says, well, that's why I'm approaching you right now, because I'm a little embarrassed. We don't have something on the shelf that really illuminates succession, how to really approach this whole idea of getting ready for the biggest job of your life, and maybe doing that intentionally with a plan. There could be a program here. Does it have to be like every week's crisis? We read the headlines and it would seem that we're dropping like flies when it comes to CEOs. So he said this would be as good a time, and maybe yesterday even better, to start to address this issue, because we've seen a real acceleration in the shortening of the tenures of CEOs.
So, Mark, you talk a lot about, you argue that most executives are preparing for the wrong job. What does the book reveal about the real work of a CEO?
Well, it's interesting. Our great mentor and kind of the father of the profession, Marshall Goldsmith, wrote his most extraordinary book. I think the greatest classic really is What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And what was shocking to my co-author and I, my business partner, Byron, who runs the board practice at NASDAQ, they boast as a regulator as well as a stock exchange, the world's biggest multi-trillion-dollar stock exchange. And so he's in the boardroom all the time. And, we had this epiphany. The main job of the board is to hire and fire the CEO, and maybe to hire one of us as coaches so they don't have to go straight from hire to fire. And so what's really missing, that what got you here won't get you there, maybe seems to be a bigger leap than most boards and most individuals realize. You look at this guy or gal who's running the company as having this incredible mandate, power, authority, gravitas. And when you realize, when you actually get the job, that you don't have a mandate, you have to embrace a huge group of stakeholders. You used to have, in a sense, the luxury of one boss and many others that you had dotted lines with. But once you become the CEO, now you have to be the wizard who can manage all of these incredible stakeholders. You have to do it at scale. One moment you're talking to the media and you're on a live television broadcast, and the next moment you're at a bar mitzvah or a wedding or a funeral. And for each, you have to be able to find what success is going to look like before you arrive. And nobody cares what you were just doing. They care about the fact that they have an agenda for the boss and he or she is here. And that is a hell of a leap for folks. And it's been one after I have done it now 127 times. Marshall in the forward of the book says I've even done it more than he, but nobody could attest more, frankly, to the fact that we just have to develop new skills in every job we have, whether it's CEO or at every level of higher responsibility we take. We have to not continue to underestimate what we got to learn and who we need to work with in order to make it happen.
127. One,
Yeah.
I love how specific that was.
I've been told to actually track and keep count now, right?
Yeah, like, I mean, you could. That's good.
Otherwise, it's like I've done a lot, but well,
yeah.
I guess it's now. It should feel like a lot.
I mean, 127 does feel like a lot because no one ever knows, and you do, and it's significant. I love that. The other thing is you're being called in at different times for different reasons, and
Right.
What is there a pattern that you see? Like, are you called in?
It's not usually the most ideal thing. I mean, coaches like Rhett and I are usually they're knocking on the door, hopefully as a part of a programmatic approach to leadership development. Hopefully they're helping that individual that they've asked us to support have better impact, a better life, a better level of collaboration with others. And yet, most often there's also some triggering event. Something may not be going down the way it should. I'd say that perhaps the most significant that I'm seeing that's creating this amazing acceleration right now, and I yesterday just was asked to submit a column in Fortune on this and in Dow Jones because it's having such financial impact as well, which is the activists are knocking on the door. These are people whose mission in life is to make a profit based on attacking companies, usually their board of directors, often taking out board members and evaluating each of them individually. It's not just a bunch of golf buddies anymore, or it won't be by the time the activists are finished. So it used to be, even just 5 years ago, if an activist knocked on the window, and you could kind of wave them off because there's like a 1 in 5% chance something would happen, like getting fired as a CEO. Today, it's at least a 20% chance you'll be gone in a year. And if they get on the board, there's a higher chance that you'll be gone within 6 months. And if you are a part of a big, well-known brand, in other words, that's where you kind of have a target painted on your chest. They're really targeting the big guys and the big brands. Chances that you'll be exited within a year will be, closer to 40%. So you've seen this massive turnover among CEOs, and that's leading boards to say, well, it's really lighting a fire under this transition planning. Who do we have in the pipeline? If she's going to become CEO, who has she put in place as the bench and all the way down through the system? Because companies still overwhelmingly would prefer to hire an insider who can hit the ground running. And the paradox is that the curse of the insider is we don't just want more of same. We want you to transform the company while keeping the best of the culture and not changing too much, but changing everything when it comes to facing the customer that may be necessary in order to win or prevent disruption. And the outsider will come in bragging about all the great new things that she or he could do, and yet would take some time to really get up the learning curve and may or may not really be relevant to your company. So we've seen a big variability on who gets announced as an insider or an outsider. I've seen insiders this last earnings quarter get announced and the stock plummeting, and another insider, we've seen it soar. At Nike, it went up because they wanted to get back to basics. They like the insider getting pulled in. At Target, the insider is very steady, but they need a transformation in order to compete with Amazon and Target. So you need to be the kind of right boss for the time, and everybody is in a crossroads. Whether it's AI, whether it's tech, whether it's disruption.
So what I love about this book is it's really about sort of dismantling you're talking about building from within. Is this about the perfect resume, or what should be, when looking for this transformational leader that you just talked about, right? It's sort of a combination of everything. How do you find that right person? Because it's not just about legacy or
Right.
the person that's been there the longest. I mean, this is about finding the right dynamic, right? And so talk about that a little bit.
Right, the right person for the moment. We write a whole chapter. It's like you need to be the person that the shareholders are going to value for this precise moment in transition of the company. Everybody's going through a transformation. Everybody's being forced through change
right.
and disruption. So it ends up being a little bit like casting. I might be colored a little bit because I'm sitting on top of Broadway here and love it. But I'm thinking about chorus line. Who am I anyway? Am I my resume? I don't think so. It's not that simple because you have to, in a sense, run for office and never leave the impression that you are. It needs to be much more nuanced and subtle. And so the way we wrote this book was there's basically 7 judges in the jury, and you need to find a way to make a bridge with each of them, more or less. They have a huge impact on being able to make a difference in whether you get elected, and moreover, all of them can lead to you getting killed as a candidate.
What are people looking for? What are the requirements today, like to get to?
Yeah, I'd say that one of the ways that I find that I end up stepping in when I'm helping candidates, they've selected a short list of kind of elite candidates. Everybody's missing something on the resume. Let's go back to that. In order to be able to be enterprise-wide with your capacity to drive this enterprise, often people are pulled from being CFO. I'll give you that example. Maybe 40% of new CEOs are former CFOs. And so what they've got going for them that's obvious to everyone is they should know the Wall Street. They should know who the shareholders are. They should have the gravitas to be able to do this amazing ceremony called the earnings release and the earnings and analyst calls and the analyst day. And this is its own form of theater. It has its own language. And what the candidate like a CFO would need to learn then is there's many other languages that they have to at least have conversational fluency in, like how do you actually run a business? I've been mapping the profit and loss. I'm good at accounting. I've got the green eye shade. I can raise capital. Have you run anything? Have you actually delivered an operating P&L? Have you actually inspired the troops? Have you won hearts and minds through the customer? Have you done ride-alongs? Have you been to the factory? Do you understand manufacturing? So what the board is looking for is a person who has been so great in their swim lane that now what they're really proving is that they can move to an enterprise view. The quickest way to lose, actually, if you are ever visiting a CEO, it's also true with the board, the quickest way to lose their interest is just to be a subject matter expert. Because what they're really looking for in that new candidate is that you have enough empathy for the enterprise in terms of all its functions. And that's why we say there's at least 7 that you have to get pretty good at and be able to empathize and at least have a conversational fluency, whether it's marketing, whether it's compliance, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's understanding go-to-market strategy or ride-alongs with customers, or what it really takes to build, and then how to manage all of the vagaries of geopolitics and regulations and tariffs and all the rest. So that breadth and depth is probably what's making this the kind of the most impossible, or maybe will become the next series of the most dangerous game to get in.
Yeah, you said the bridge. You want there's this bridge, but you've described now 7 bridges plus the entry bridge.
Yes.
So there's 8 bridges you have to build and maintain. Is that how it works? And
no fewer.
No fewer. Okay, great. And what are the 7? Can you name them?
Sure. So you've got the people who actually who make the final decision are officially in charge in terms of the role. It's called governance. Basically, they're supposed to be thinking about how this company governs itself from a strategic standpoint, how it selects its people. Most boards will have a GovNom, governance and nominating committee to kind of start this process of selecting a CEO. So building that bridge with you think you have a great relationship with the board of directors because you've gone to dinner with them and they're very chummy and you shared some laughs and drinks together. You presented in the boardroom many times. Let's say you were the CFO, so you always had the quarterly earnings up there. and they've all winked at you and said, you're the next one. You're the best. And what you don't realize is they're dating a lot of candidates inside and outside. As a fiduciary, they have to be winking at all of the best candidates internally. They're also probably making that same sort of friendly, chummy pitch to the president of an operating division who's been running something, and she rocks at delivering. And what they're trying to get her to be trained for is to learn more about Wall Street. So they're bringing her into the analyst meetings, to the analyst day. She's co-piloting some of the earnings announcements. So in other words, trying to give her the breadth of street knowledge because she knows how to run a business. And we're trying to give that CFO more understanding of her business. Corey Berry did that when she was tapped by Hubert Joly at Best Buy. She's supposed to be trying to step into the legendary shoes of Hubert Joly, who turned around the big box store. And he taps on her, and she sends him a note saying, well, I appreciate the thought, bots, but here's the one page that makes me qualified, and I've got 6 others that are skill sets that I ain't got and don't want to do. And so he said, actually, that's the humility I'm looking for, is to learn all those other stakeholder groups and build those bridges and learn about them. So you go from board of directors, you need to understand the CFO in Wall Street. You need to understand the operations of the business. I'm oversimplifying, but that whole part that has to do with manufacturing and delivering services or product. You need to be in a position where you can win hearts and minds among employees and customers. In other words, the employees that serve those people. You need to be in a position where you understand, as the CFO does, the shareholder side of the business, but also the board of directors as its own entity, because they're the ones who are going to actually ultimately make the decision. And one of the new areas that kind of rounds out the 7 that is so key, that is shocking, I think, for a lot of people right now, and that's the assessors and consultants who are coming in to dismantle and unpack your personality. So you're going to be, I've found, at least among my clients, I don't know about you, Rhett, but I've come across it, and I write about it in the book, at least 23 different types of psych profiles, heuristics, case studies, business analysis.
Endless.
The Enneagram, the DISC and all the rest. And so this is significant because it's not just affecting your candidacy as CEO. It's kind of affecting the candidacy of anybody who's applying for any promotion. And it allows those assessors and recruiting firms to kind of embed themselves in the HR department, and may intentionally or unintentionally starting to have influence on even your mobility around the other layers of the company. Because you've been assessed, so they know what Mark's doing. And, maybe he shouldn't even be an SVP. Or because you used to associate the recruiting firm with being, I'd like to be on their radar because maybe I'll get a better gig somewhere else.
Right.
So they end up being this new stakeholder. They aren't necessarily choosing the boss, but boy, sometimes they're leading you with them.
They have a lot of influence on it, for sure.
Have a huge influence. So that's what you're really looking to do, is to understand who the stakeholder influencers are, and start to be just conversational enough and understanding each of their languages and what their agenda is. Because once you become the boss, the CEO, it's not 7, it's now 700 different dimensions of everybody who's meeting you is hitting on you. Everybody has an agenda. And so that's what we really wanted to cover in the book, is kind of a primer. And then finally, actually I start out the book this way. The most important stakeholder is you. Do you really want to do this? Yeah. Why? It's not for everybody. Benita, when she does her research and collaboration, she has this wonderful phrase, that the CEO is not a prize to be won, but a job to be done. And so it ends up getting, kind of both demonized and lifted on a pedestal. That role of the CEO. It's not for everybody. In fact, some of my best candidates are people who said no and really had to go through a thought process to say, so do I want to do board meetings, or do I want to be a chief scientist curing cancer? That's what Arthur Levinson told me. He's now, the famous CEO he was CEO for 14 years, created huge value at Genentech, but he didn't want to come over to that role. He didn't want to get distracted from saving lives. And his partner, and Bob Swanson, who funded the company, died before they even found the first product. So it was a valid question to stop, assess. Is this really, really what you want to do? Is there anything wrong with being the best scientist in the world, the best CFO in the world? I mean, come on. It's not for most people to do this impossible job. So that's legit. Stop, assess, make the question. I've had people who say, you know what? That's not for me, but I am going to create a legacy that won't quit in terms of being the best designer, best ad guy, you name it.
And sometimes it's not even in your best interest to do it, right? Because the likelihood of surviving, 2 years, if you really love what you're doing in the company you're in, it's tough. It's tough
such a huge point, Rhett, because I do bring up there is a lot of kind of fears and myths, and one of the biggest is like, do I just want to be the person remembered for taking this incredible brand all the way down? Right? It's like here's an easy job. I want to step in for Steve Jobs. Now you could say a lot of things about whether he was a great manager or a terrible one, but really you're going to follow in Steve's footsteps and then somehow take the value of the company and the markets from 300 billion to 4 trillion. That's what the successor did. But let's follow Bill Gates. Well, that was Steve Ballmer for quite a while, and then Satya, who's not the same guy. They almost overlooked Satya because he was just so chill, so collaborative, and Ballmer was so bombastic. So that goes back to your earlier question too about, am I even going to be the right fit for this culture? Can I really make the difference that I need to meet? And then stepping into the shadow of giants. Damn.
What can boards learn from the book?
I think the boards are really snapping this up. That's interesting. We were doing our book launch this week at NASDAQ, and I've now been at 3 different conferences that are all focused on boards because the boards are the ones who have the charter of deciding who's going to be selected and who's going to be fired. And when they're seeing their companies under attack, they're seeing so much change and volatility, the stakes of picking that person are higher than ever. And so now they need to think often, when the CEO succession plan works, it's kind of, it gets a little bit delegated to the current incumbent CEO. She or he has a hell of a lot of other things to do. And so one of the lessons is there needs to be someone on the board, like they did when Bob Iger and Disney got attacked. The proxy fight was able to fend off the activists by not eliminating board members or firing Bob, but they got the memo. A few months later, they brought in a new head of the governance and nominating committee who had a lot of gravitas from Morgan Stanley, and then they set a plan in place and they said, hey, look, we're going to decide who the successor is, and she or he's coming in 2026, and it's not you, Bob. So we love you, but we'll miss you. And so making those kinds of choices, boards, perhaps that's more aggressive, maybe that's more assertive, or maybe that's more proactive. Enrique Lores at Hewlett Packard just does an incredible job of institutionalizing a programmatic approach to leadership development. Everybody's getting better at everything. Everybody has a coach. Everybody is on a program to get better at the skills they need to rise to the next job, or deselect out of it, or move to another one. But this whole idea of a train wreck, or getting hit by a car, or worse yet, I think getting hit by an activist, creating these transitions is just, it's uncalled for. I mean, the job of the board is to select this person. There should be a plan. When my partner at NASDAQ, he does a survey every year, asked how many companies have plans, I was shocked. Only half said they'd had one. And of the half that had one, when you asked them for a sample of it, only half of them could send you something. So it's not a lot. Boards can learn a lot, I think, and I was proud of them this week because it was at the National Association of Corporate Directors, which is the organization that thinks about these things. And then at NASDAQ, we were at the Alpha AI conference where boards are trying to figure out how to reconcile what AI means to the company. And then I was with the Risk Management Association that's doing a NASDAQ survey. All of a sudden, yes, cybersecurity is a big deal. Yes, actual personal security for leaders now is frightening. The number of the security details that are showing up, and because you need to be safe, and because if you're a lightning rod as a leader, whether you're a CEO or a government official, it's more dangerous than ever before, is really quite remarkable. And now, so they're thinking, this selection of the CEO ends up being one of the biggest, riskiest decision a board director will ever make.
Yeah, it's interesting because every case you described this unique personality, and it's almost like you're saying they're the fit for this moment, especially when you talk about the different stages of a business.
Yeah.
And how much of your work and how much of the book does it cover, like accessing like your personality in the right way? Like you said, Steve Ballmer, bombastic, right? I'm sure that's not great in every situation, but it is kind of what got him the job in the first place. So you're like, you're leaning too hard into a persona, maybe?
It didn't happen by accident. It's for sure. In fact, I'm going to quote Dr. Bunn again. Dr. Benita Thompson was doing research about collaboration and realized that most people do get hired based on those aggressive kind of emergent skills, because we're so desperate to get someone who could take command. She's going to deliver on this. He's going to be a hero. We needed you 6 months ago. Where have you been? You're now going to make the decisions. We all love you. And about 6 weeks later, we can't stand you. We want to fire you. You're making all the decisions. You're not collaborating with anybody. You're running everyone out, or you're mansplaining like hell. It's like, we can't stand you anymore. The same characteristics that we hired you for are not what we're retaining you for. So that ends up, that misalignment that she works on in her practice is so central to the problem that you're describing, in terms of kind of, are we really sure who we're hiring and what for? Cynthia, your question takes another dimension of this, which is what do I find in myself for this moment in time? Because it's like I have to be many different people, is what we're really saying. You need to stop and being able to assess what success looks like in every meeting. And it might go from a funeral to a wedding, and at the very least. And so that's why I really spend the first couple of chapters trying to talk you out of this whole thing, and say, are you really sure? Because if you're mission driven, and let's go back to Arthur Levinson, he ended up taking a job at Genentech because talking to his advisors, the most important, which the smartest person I ever met, his wife, convinced him that you actually might create a foundation for growth and actually deliver therapies for cancer that would help women and men improve their lives and save communities and families. And that's what finally sold, you ought to do board meetings, and maybe you need to tolerate the volatility of a day because the mission is so great. And he was great at the mission. And then Steve Jobs came after him and said, would you be one of my board members? Because you seem to be taking such an ego-free approach to your mission. And he said no again. So his same advisor said, well, wait, do you think you could kind of help Steve out? You're a technical guy, you're a science guy. And today, almost 2 decades later, he's chairman of Apple. Arthur is. So thinking about measuring kind of, would the world be a little better place if you were able to take this next role, or to take, this is a true metaphor that Marshall talks about all the time in Earned Life when we did our leadership plan reviews, where he would say, I know, is it uncomfortable for you to kind of stretch yourself? Sally Helgesen talks about that with How Women Rise. Is it hard to promote yourself? Is it hard to really make sure that your point's going to be made? And yes, everybody's like uncomfortable with that. But do you think the world would be a better place if it happened? Yes, absolutely. Well, what do you think? What do you think's worth more? And not that everything should be taking always one for the team. That's not sustainable either. It's an and. It's a genius of the and versus the tyranny of the or. Not everything you do every day is all fun. That's true for all of us here.
Marshall has told me more than once to get over myself in terms of the taking that next leap and that next step. So we hate to wrap it up. We got a couple minutes left. I want to get to where people can buy the book and how they can get in touch with you, because I know you speak globally and all that. But I have one more question. What's one chapter after people buy the book and they've read it? What's a chapter here, or is there a chapter that you say that you would recommend that they read every year to sort of remind themselves, or as they progress through an organization? is there one passage or one part of the book that they should just reread constantly to keep things top of mind?
Well, at first, I think I can admit this in public, that I was warned away to do a book with Harvard Business Review because it could be so hard and so challenging. And I might get challenged more than I might be comfortable with doing at my age and with my experience. And of course, those things were all true and ended up being the best learning experience I think I've ever had writing this 5th book. And one of those things was when Scott Baronato came back to me and said, we need this final chapter, the one that everyone reads every year, Rhett. And it's the one that you can go kind of get a sense of what did I think I got out of this last time? It's going to be different seen through the lens of the person I've changed into in this last year. We're all changing. We're all, if we're growing, it's not the same lens a year ago as it is today. Everything's revisionist history when you look back at it, right?
Yeah.
So that final chapter, the concluding chapter, is one that would be, for some people, fun to start with and end with as you think the new year ahead and the resolutions you have. It's a fun one.
Fantastic. Well, Cynthia, you want to take us out?
Yeah, no, I love this. Thank you so much for being here. And, I'm going to follow up and see who number 128 is on your list of CEOs you work with.
It isn't you, Cynthia? Okay.
Huh?
It isn't you? Okay. I thought that's why you were on the call here, not just hosting.
Oh, yeah. I'm pitching myself to understand.
You're the next candidate.
Let's do it. But no, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And everyone should get the book. It is CEO Ready, and it's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So you have all holiday to just hunker down and read it. But yeah, we'll be back next week with another episode of Bestseller Live. And thank you again, Mark. And of course, Rhett, it's always a pleasure to have you by my side.
Yeah.
Same.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this, guys. Really appreciate it. And look forward to more time together.
Indeed.